I'm sorry, my brain is lagging behind because I stayed up all night last night, which is something I usually do. It's because my virtues and giving up the virtues, going to sleep. Sleep is brain death. Something that I don't want to let go of. I want to hold on to my virtues and stay awake. So I've got to learn to recognize that my thoughts aren't my flesh and to separate the two. So, wanted to make this video because the last video was the most philosophical that I've gotten on this channel, was talking about whether or not God is real. And I think God, from my understanding, is probably not what we think he is. I've studied, but I haven't studied them in depth. I still know nothing about them, but I've studied Buddhism, bit of Buddhism, because you can find Zen Buddhist themes in Stoicism. I studied Christianity, and I have two Bibles in my house. One is on my phone, the other is in the kitchen. Studied Islam, read most of the Quran, and I know of the 5 pillars. Spoken to a lot of Muslims online, so I pretty much have the whole story, but I know nothing of the hadiths. And I know a little bit about Judaism. I know nothing of Hinduism. I know nothing of any of the polytheist religions, even though I read a bit of Greek mythology. And I don't know if God can be any identification with our thoughts. And I don't know if we create heaven and hell for ourselves, and heaven and hell are just mental states. And the answer to that is that it depends. But I get that philosophy from a book which I haven't even read, which is called Paradise Lost. I'm sure that there's something along those lines that are mentioned in it. So, I don't know what is real and what isn't real. Nowadays we have the matrix, which is used to group. It's used by the manosphere to group governments together with the media that serve the governments, and governments that are run by oligarchies. They're pretty much oligarchies. And they clamber over each other, creating issues. But they're just man-made systems creating more man-made systems. They're just illusions. And when you're seeking power, you lose touch with your virtues. I'm trying to find some way in between where I can aspire for power but not let it go to my head. With ego is something, it's a tool, it's useful that we can turn up and turn down, but I suppose that's ultimately an illusion too. And the way that we see ourselves, like you project an image of yourself into the world, and maybe it's your shadow, maybe your shadow is an alpha warrior, or maybe is a coward, but that is an illusion as well. And then esteem Holding yourself in high regards or low regards, that's also an illusion. Intelligence is an illusion that most people mistake for consciousness. And people hold God in high esteem because our ego is also used to rank things. Hold God in the highest esteem is like they put God on a pedestal, and God is value that the one thing. But God is seen as the supreme intelligence. And I don't know whether you could say that intelligence is subjective or whether that's just used a lot of the time as a cop out where they say, oh, but it's subjective, that's your God. Well, yes, maybe there's one God, or maybe there's several gods, but we read the evidence and then we have like ego rankings because the evidence, they're not evidence, it's evidence what we perceive to be evidence, the Bible and the Quran and the Torah. And then we have ego rankings, like the Quran is the best, then the Torah. And religion could be man-made structure, and if it's man-made then it's illusory because we had an illusory perception and decided to project it out onto reality. Ultimately, all thoughts are illusions, and you mistake yourself for being your thoughts, but yourself is a part of your thoughts. Your real self is your body, and there's nothing to it. Your real self is your body, and that's all you have is your body, and then the awareness of your body and the awareness of the sensations that your body feels, perceives, pain and pleasure. But then there's a higher order where you are told that if you forego carnal desires, you may enter heaven. But what if heaven is like I said earlier, just a mental state? If you forego carnal desires, exerting some degree of self-control, which is also an illusion because a natural state is just cannibalism and tribalism, then you will be rewarded by what we used to have as we used to perceive everything to be God. Maybe everything is a part of the same God, which has given us this awareness. We perceived there to be gods inside of the trees and gods in the rivers. And with the cognitive revolution, that was our mode of being. I don't know if God is an illusion. God would be a delusion, actually, but historically, our history is pretty much an illusion because one side says that it's like this and another side says that it's like that. And when you're studying history and reading up about the history, like whose history are you reading? You're reading the history of your country and from your country's perspective. And of course, in America, Texas, textbooks are being whitewashed and they don't talk about the oppression, wanting to seek power and dominance and upon the Indians and driving them out, driving them into reservation camps with false promises and slaughtering the people. All governments have been founded upon greed, but anarchism isn't necessarily the best system. We came up with more efficient systems, but ultimately efficiency is flawed because it's an illusion. And I think when you try to over efficient size, I don't know if that's even a word, but we'll use that concept, we'll use it anyway. Over efficient size things, that you can become too entangled with your thoughts, and if time is an illusion, you become distracted by the illusion of time, and you waste time. I think Parkinson's law is that time expands, that your work expands to suit the allotted time or something, or time expands to suit your work. But we think that more will make us feel whole when more hedonic adaptation, which is another illusory concept, but that kicks in, and then more means nothing to us. And we have a hole inside of ourselves, which could be a God-shaped hole that we try to fill. We try and fill this void, and this void is a creation of our ego, because it's how we hold ourselves in esteem. So it's ultimately all an illusion, but a pain is what makes our experiences real. And the fact that we came from tribes, well, if we did, it's how we, like our evolution, how we evolved to relate and connect to one another. But you gain a full sense of connection through social media, which I've been on all the time, and I'm comparing myself to other people when those comparisons are not me. Those comparisons are just illusions. And the education system, which is flawed, but that's because it was based on an illusion. And people thought it to be the best system to, and it was, to get people into factories. We create systems for ourselves based on our, I suppose, our relative perception, and then it becomes objective to us because it's what we've always known, and it's what we've always done. And then questioning that system, maybe it would lead you to a greater amount of efficiency, but I suppose it's ultimately causing yourself pain because you're making problems for yourself. And then comes the question, are these the right problems for you? Are these the problems that are worth solving? Because a lot of the time we're clambering over ourselves for an illusion of control. We can never really be free because we tie ourselves to these systems, and there's always going to be thoughts you can't turn off thinking. You wouldn't want to turn off thinking. But yeah,